All right. Welcome everybody to Talk Openly. I'm Jac, and this is my excellent friend, Daniel.
Hey, everybody.
Hey, Daniel.
Hi,
It's been 2
Jac.
weeks.
Wow, it's been so long.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
good to see you.
I noticed we're both rocking new looks. You with the
I'm,
glasses and me with no hair.
yeah, I like it. I like it. I dig the hair, their lack of hair anyway. I'm a big fan,
Yeah,
as
it's
you can
been
tell.
like yeah, it's been like 6 years since I've had a fully shaved head, and this feels wonderful. I just it's weird because I used to have really long hair, and that was like no maintenance. I would just wash it, right? And then
Yeah.
I buzzed it and then started growing it out, doing men's cuts, and that was like way more maintenance than like quote unquote women's hair. So
Get out of here. I don't believe
yeah.
you. No
Yeah,
way.
because you got to go in like every 2 months if you're gonna like have it nice and neat. So,
Oh my gosh. No, no, you just get clippers. You can do it whenever you feel like it.
oh, not this hair.
Oh,
No,
oh,
no, like
oh,
a men's haircut.
oh.
Yeah,
Oh,
men's
I
haircut.
see. I
That's
see.
what I just,
Gotcha.
yeah,
Yeah,
buzzed
yeah.
it. Yeah.
Buzz it. It looks good and it probably feels good. I bet it's refreshing.
It is refreshing. Yeah, it's getting hot up here. But
Yeah, and I've got reading glasses on. I went to the optometrist for the first time in my life.
really,
I'm about to be 46 years old, and she said, "You're right on time." she, she's like, "This is perfect. This is exactly when your eyes are supposed to start degrading. Not supposed to, but like according to like when most people's eyes begin to fail them." And she was like, so that she gave me the minimum, or she told me to get the first pair of reading glasses that you could get. So it
yeah,
makes a little bit of a difference, I suppose. Plus, I like the way it looks. I've never had glasses my whole life. My whole
right.
family wears glasses and I don't, but now I get to. So I feel like I'm part of the gang now.
You are, yeah, and all that to show the, just the never-ending change that happens in our lives, and the maintenance of, yeah, just keeping up a body. It's
Oh,
incredible the work we have to do.
well, it's like what is it? Is it the first or the second law of thermodynamics that all things tend towards entropy?
Yeah,
Meaning it's all falling apart. So the only way that you can make it, be less chaotic is to put a lot of energy into it. That's the maintenance part of things.
man.
And man, I suck at maintenance.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of maintenance either, hence the bald head.
Yeah, I did. Hey, I'm right there with you. I'm a big fan. I mean, I
Yeah.
didn't have much of a choice on the bald head,
Yeah.
uh, but it's all. I leaned into it early. I was just like, man, this is nonsense. So I buzzed it a long time ago.
Totally. I was thinking for a second yesterday, before my partner buzzed it, I was thinking, should I just like have him do like the fryer cut like
Oh
first so I can see what I would look like with like, just the sideburns and the around, like
yeah,
the Christian monk look.
that would have been so cool.
I
You
think
didn't do it
I
though.
didn't do it. No, I think I got a little nervous. Just take it all off.
I was looking through some pictures the other day, just a few years ago. I had a mohawk for a brief moment.
Really?
Yeah,
Oh,
like
you gotta
the
send
same
that.
kind of thing. I was buzzing my hair, and then I was like, I'm just gonna leave the middle part and grow it into a mohawk. It looked pretty good. I like it.
Nice. Nice. I love it. Yeah. Well, I'm glad we get to joke and have fun because I'm feeling like super anxious today, which is good for tonight's topic because it's about antidotes to anxiety. So I'm glad we're going to be able to reflect on that, and maybe give me a little bit more ideas and motivation to help me through today.
I
Uh,
hope so. I
yeah.
hope so. I can't. I gotta say, like I think that there's been a fair amount of that on my end as well. I'm not feeling particularly like super anxious right now, but it's sort of like a blend of anxiety and melancholy.
Yes, I'm feeling that as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so there's
Maybe
something
it's
that
just some of that
maybe,
summertime sadness, like Lana Del Rey says.
yes, yes. Okay, we got to turn that song on after this. I
Yeah,
love
I
that
know, right?
song.
Me too. Or maybe it was the full moon.
True. It's kind of like a mix of all the things.
Maybe it's all the things.
All the things. And also samsara sucks.
Yeah, it does.
It really
Yeah,
does.
it does.
Yeah. What is your samsara looking like the last couple weeks?
My samsara. You know, if the way that I think about it is it feels a lot like summertime in the sense that there is a lot of growth happening. There's a lot of movement. Things are sort of like springing up and like taking my attention. And there's been, like the kids are now out of school, so it shifts the schedule around, and like work, has new different challenges, and it's just all a little bit different, and like even just little things like, when it's cooler weather, for example, I go out for more walks. That makes me happy, makes my dog happy. Now I'm like, oh, I got to get out before it's too hot. And I don't know, it's all kind of screwed up as far as I'm concerned, but but it's all right, like I'm riding that wave. I'm really glad though that, I'm really, really glad that I have a consistent meditation practice throughout all of this. I've noticed that my sits there's a lot of calm, there's a lot of stillness there. And so it's a nice sort of relief from and contrast with sort of the samsaric aspect of life. And I noticed that, as I noticed that the effect lasts well beyond the meditation. And I think that it's serving me quite well. So like, I'm really, really glad for that.
Yeah, it is kind of cool when you can be in the midst of all this chaos, and yet there is this kind of anchoring that's happening in your practice.
That's right.
It really is a refuge. Yeah, that's such a good word for it.
It is. I remember it reminds me of a sign I saw on some like recovery center wall. It was serenity is not freedom from the storm, but peace amid the storm, or something like that.
Yeah,
It really does kind of feel like that. I'll sometimes be surprised. I'll be like, oh my God, I can feel the anxiety. I can feel the stress. I can feel sort of that strain. And also I can feel the need, like I had this compulsion. I need to do more. I need to do more. And then I'm like, yeah, but it's important for me to sit. And then I'll sit, and I'm kind of surprised, to drop into, all of a sudden, it's like, maybe it's something like the eye of the hurricane, like all around me, the wind is like stirring things up, but like I'm right there, and it's been really quite beautiful. I wouldn't say like super concentrated, not super duper concentrated, but it's very like I'm blown away by this sort of stillness and calm.
Yeah, it's grounding.
Yeah. It is. It's grounding. Exactly that. So yeah, that's what's up with me. What about you? How was your visit with your mom, and what's going on?
Yeah. Well, that's part of kind of the chaos with me as well, is that there's just a lot of like interpersonal stuff going on with family and then at work. And yeah, if anything tugs at me the most, it's relationships. And also reputation. Those are the two things that tug at me most, and those are related, right? But yeah, I would say this week has been like the first week that I've had like actual cravings for alcohol and tobacco for like a long time. Like it's that kind of feeling of like, oh, I just want that really quick relief, and I haven't done that, I haven't engaged in that. But yeah, it's just like, I feel the same way as you about summertime, where like the amount of activity, and I think also just like brightness, where it's like everything just, there's an added layer of like tension to everything that happens for me. And which is so funny because, I always complain in the winter up here, like, oh God, I just want like a full sunny day. And now I have like a week or more of it. And I'm like, stop, give me some space, I want my cave. But yeah, my visit with my mom, it ended up going very well. I had this experience of, a couple days in, I was feeling this kind of like knot at my heart of sadness and tension and kind of angst, like almost like a teenagery angst, where I kind of wanted to find ways to lash out or, say something snarky. And so I really had to sit with that because I knew there was something going on where there was some element of like exaggeration about what was happening. Because I've learned in the last few years that while my mom and I have a lot of strong differences in important ways, she loves me no matter what. And there's a reason why she came up here to visit me, it's not, like she came up here to visit me because she loves me and wants to spend time with me. So I knew there was something happening within me where I was just overemphasizing maybe hurt that I've felt from the past. And so I really sat with that, and also, explored like, how would I feel if I just left it at that? If I just let my mom go home without kind of exploring that, I would have felt really angry, I think. And part of this is that, a lot of times when we talk, we just kind of talk kind of shallow level, like about my job or, James, the cat, and, my partner, which is great. Those are all important things, but they're not like there's a greater depth that she doesn't want to go to, because then that would be talking about my sexuality and gender and polyamory and Buddhism and these things that are, they're difficult topics for her, which I understand. But we ended up having a really good conversation before she left, talking about all those things. And it was very hard to bring up, but I think the results for both of us were just a lot more understanding. She knows that I'm a Buddhist now, which is like amazing. I wasn't sure if I was going to tell her that ever, but it's just such an important part of my life, and I want her to know that. So anyways, it felt good to challenge myself and to challenge this narrative that I had in my head that like, oh, she's gonna be she's gonna lash out, or she's gonna think like, or she's gonna say something mean or cruel, and it just didn't happen. So interesting to look at the mind, and not let it tear you apart, right? Because that is what happens when I get in that narrative. I've been, in that narrative feeling like just hurt and like I don't belong in the family, and I'm just, that I'm the black sheep, and no one wants to talk about this stuff. But it's not totally true. It's a little bit true, right?
Right.
Not 100%.
Well, congratulations on coming out of the closet as a Buddhist to your mom.
Yeah.
And I think that what you just said about how our perspective, thoughts, beliefs, stories, whatever you want to call that, how we create this sort of story that maybe there's like a kernel of truth to, but maybe, maybe it's largely not true. And especially as it pertains to the future, right? And that's what we're talking about, anxiety. And so like a lot of times how those kinds of stories, those kinds of thoughts, like I already know she's going to be like this. And if I say this, then that's going to cause these problems. And, and then there'll be an even larger rift. And there's this whole,
right,
stormy cloud going on inside there. And then somehow you meet that challenge, right? You overcome the resistance, you do the thing, right? You step up to the plate, and then you're like, boom, it's done. It's done, right? Now, and it's not anything like what you imagined it was. I mean, maybe a little bit, maybe there's some of that. And I think what's beautiful about what you're doing there is that, a lot of times, like, that's like, at least with my parents, I know this is true, is that sometimes these difficult conversations, for example, like in the moment, sometimes there's sort of like a deer in the headlight sort of experience. Like they don't quite, know what to say. So maybe they kind of like hold back a little bit, but then they go home or they go away and then they reflect on it. And then there's some kind of like maturation of that relationship past that, you know?
Most
So
definitely.
I'm hoping that that's the case for you, and that that's just leads to all the good things that can possibly come.
Thank you. Yeah, I think it will. I'm um you know, in this scenario, just reminded of the fact that people can and do and always change. Like,
Yeah.
maybe not always, but in other ways they change. They do always change, but maybe they don't change their ideas all the time. But my mom does. My mom has changed in the last decades that I've known her.
Right.
So can I set aside that version of her that, feels so like stuck?
Yeah.
And just
Well,
say like, oh yeah, this is a new part of my mom. Yeah.
yeah, and like you have an active role as a catalyst for that change.
Yep.
So,
Yep. For
that's
sure.
an it's not a whatever, it's an active aspect of their change, right? Is your
Right.
involvement.
That's the interdependence, that
Right.
we need each other. And of course, like doing our own work, putting in our own effort, but it's not going to happen unless, we have relationships.
That's right.
Yeah. Wild stuff.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Well, thanks for listening. Yeah. And otherwise, yeah, there's a cat in the family who's possibly dying, and
James?
yeah, no, not James, not James, my sister's cat, beloved
Okay.
cat. And tumultuousness at work. And so it's just, it's all the things. And I'm just so grateful that, oh yeah, that I have my meditation practice and a teacher, because I would be extremely overwhelmed right now. And I am anxious and stressed, but I'm not at risk of keeling over. So
Yay.
yeah, yay.
Good.
Well, what do you think? Should we check out our Lojong slogan of the week?
Oh, yeah, let's do it. Let's do it.
Great.
Okay.
We've got this wonderful, if you haven't checked it out already, resource on the Lions Roar website. It's a random Lojong slogan generator. These kind of
Mm-hmm.
pithy instructions.
That's right. I like to shake the page a little bit before we get going, just
All
like a
right.
pair of dice.
Shake the
And
page.
then here we go. Let's see what it comes up with. Oh, all right.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. So number 24, I like it. Change your attitude, but remain neutral.
Natural.
Natural. No, that's a really good. Thank you for that correction. Change your attitude, but remain natural. Let's see what Trella Kibgon has to say. Lojong practice is about transforming the way we view the world, not changing the way we present ourselves to it. Changes in the way we perceive ourselves and in how we relate to our disturbing thoughts and emotions and our attitudes to other people are far more important than changes in our appearance, mannerisms, or personal attire. To believe otherwise would be like thinking we become more spiritual simply as a result of donning some kind of religious habit. We are trying to transform the unwholesome, self-destructive attitudes of our self-obsession. Whether others perceive us as different or not is irrelevant. Our transformation needs to be an internal one. Nice.
Wow. I think the shaking of
Hence
the
a
page.
haircut doesn't make you
Yeah.
enlightened, right?
I dig it. Yeah, I could tell that you were enlightened right when the camera turned on. Wow, that's a good one to have tonight, I think. That's really perfect.
Yeah, what about that and anxiety?
Exactly, right? I love the aspect there, the like right where it just says that what we're trying to do here with the mind training is to transform the unwholesome, self-destructive attitudes of our self-obsession.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that's actually like that's at the heart of anxiety.
Yeah,
And
the self,
yeah,
yeah, the trying to get what we think we need all the time and just chasing after it, and feeling uncomfortable with any change in our environment, or, our access to pleasurable things, you know,
Yeah.
just every little shift. I notice there's an element of anxiety, because, I feel like I just want things to stay. I just want things to stay as they are because I feel comfortable this way.
Right.
But that's not helpful. That's self-obsession. Um, and I love that too, that he says, like, um, to remain natural means that, people might not always tell that we're changing. But we still have to put in the effort. It's not about people noticing that, like, oh wow, this person is such a spiritual person, such a good
No,
person. That's that's not what we're going for. Yeah. Um, we're being natural while also transforming ourselves.
it's an inside job.
It is an inside job, and we have to I think, when I first came to the temple, I had a darshan, where I was talking a little bit about my life and, my identity and whatnot, and we were I feel like I mentioned, maybe, like, okay, I know it's not all about, like, identity, like, I know that's not what it's about. And, we talked about how, but at the same time, our lives and how we show up in our lives are what brings us to the Dharma. And so, Dharma practice is not about removing, like, our life experience or our identities, but about, like, transforming our experience within those, and using our life and our lived experience, as the path, because, depending on what our life is like and how we show up here, we're going to experience different obstacles. And so, yeah, it's how we come to the Dharma.
Wouldn't it be kind of nice though if we could just put on a robe and shave our head and that would be it?
Yeah, that would be great.
It'd be a lot easier.
It would be a lot easier. Dang it. I'm halfway there already.
Yeah, right. Just need the robes.
Sure, we could find those pretty easy.
Yeah, just like it. Yeah, anyway. I wish it were, but I like that it is the way it is. There's something to it that really gives some meaning to our lived experience. That it's not all sort of in vain. That's actually the fodder. That's what we're working with. That's the material that's to be transformed. So, and that it actually allows for all this apparent multiplicity and all these differences.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
know. It's so, yeah, it's really rad to realize that, that, yeah, we don't need to obliterate ourselves. I think that was one teaching of the Buddha, right? And, there's these kind of extremes of asceticism and, like, the all-out pleasure of, like, I don't know, a royal life or something. And on the asceticism end, it's about, like, destroying yourself. And that's not okay, like, and neither is, like, way overindulgence. We got to find the middle, which is, that we're working with ourselves, we're working with what shows up in our lives. And yeah, just applying the truth that these things change. Yeah,
Yeah,
good stuff.
exactly that. Yep.
Well, speaking of change, which is, I think, for me, one of the big sources of my anxiety. Let's talk a little bit about anxiety.
Let's do it. Well, we talked about our own experiences with it last time,
We did.
and we, like everybody else, anybody who's listening to this has a tremendous experience with anxiety already. I don't think you can really be human and not have experienced a decent amount of it.
Yeah, I don't think so either. And, part of that, as we talked about last week, really is biological. It would probably not be a good thing if you didn't ever experience anxiety. There might be something happening in your brain that is not good.
Right?
you want to be able to activate yourself in dangerous situations, but the problem now is that we have an overactive anxiety that gets triggered constantly.
All the time, and about sometimes like the weirdest stuff too. And at least in my experience, one of the things that's kind of helpful to remember is that nothing that I've ever been worried about turned out the way that I thought it would. Like it's true sometimes that, whatever, like maybe there was something that wasn't going exactly the way that I wished, and maybe there were some negative consequences to it, but it never was disastrous in the sense that, and none, like the crazy stories that my mind says about what's happening, what's going to happen, how it's always happening, it always will happen, and this is like how it is,
Yeah.
like that sort of strong fixation, strong belief in nothing more than my own mental formations. It hasn't ever actually turned out that way, and I think that part's been pretty darn helpful. It sort of reminds me, actually, I was, so there's a weekly recovery meeting at Lions Roar, and there are these Lama put together these 12 steps of liberation. It's sort of like 12 steps, but it's a little
Yeah.
Buddhisty. And the sixth step of that one says says we are mindful that we create the causes for suffering and liberation. Our goodness is indestructible. And
Hmm.
and that part, the first part especially, is this like, right, we're doing this, right? Both the suffering, so the causes of the anxiety, we're doing that. And similarly, we can be the cause for our own liberation from that anxiety. There's a way to transform it, right? To work with it, to deal with it. And I think that's what we're dealing with tonight. But the second part, where it says our goodness is indestructible, is an important part of the path of transforming and dealing with anxiety, so that we recognize that goodness and really sort of ground ourselves in it, right? Remember that it's there, and then nurture it.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think too, even when like the worst case scenario has happened, um, I think what the Dharma has done for me is allowed me to say, okay, is like, okay, this is what it is. And I'm not going to resist, and I'm going to experience this. I think that courage, that courage that the Dharma gives us to accept and experience, has really helped with my anxiety, because it's like it's building up my self-esteem. This meditation, practice where I can sit and just experience and come back to my breath, and like, okay, no matter what's happening, external to me or internal, I can still come back.
Yeah.
And that is just such a basis for confidence, right? That like, okay, yeah, no matter what shows up,
Mm-hmm.
I will handle it.
Right.
Um, yeah, and even overwhelm. Okay, I can handle overwhelm.
Yeah, you can look in the face of overwhelm and be there with it and be like, okay, I'm feeling overwhelmed right now. Look at that.
Yeah,
Right. Okay.
yeah,
I know this feeling. I've been overwhelmed before.
right.
Let's go. Right. And it's not being, not being overwhelmed by the wave, so to speak, and being bashed into the rocks and taken out to sea. Right. You are able to somehow like stay steady. I had this experience actually today. It was interesting. I had some decent amount of like anxiety showing up, and I was like, I want to do something with this. I'm not quite sure, and there was this sort of a part of me that was like, I was like, man, it'd be nice if I could just like, if I had some kind of distraction or something. And then I was like, no, and I didn't go into meditation or anything. Well, I guess it was a form of meditation. What I did was I was like, I'm just going to lay down for a second and then watch it. I'm going to just just look at them, just nothing else. I'm not no active anything. I'm just gonna like look at it and feel it, and just like not a lot of words, not a lot of thoughts associated with it. And I had to chuckle to myself because that lasted, it felt pretty strong, right? Like it felt like I was like, oh, my whole day is gonna be kind of sucky because of this.
Yeah.
Is how I was imagining it. But then I had to kind of chuckle because it was like maybe 3 or 4 minutes later, I was like, well, that's good. Let's go. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, all right, like there it is. I see it. I'm familiar with it. And I get to like, I actually, what was so weird is it was sort of like, it reminded me of actual meditation practice about how I can never really, maintain my object of concentration for that long. Eventually I'm going to go off of it. Right. So by sitting there and trying to concentrate on the feelings of anxiety, stress in my body and all that, just like watching it, like then my mind started to drift. I ended up going somewhere else and I come back and I'm like, oh, that's gone. It's not even there anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. So how funny that, in those moments where if we don't pause, but we continue with that narrative of, oh my God, this is what it's going to be like today. This feels awful. Like, oh, I hate this feeling. I don't want it. Or I want to just like get away from it and distract. That perpetuates, and your day probably would have been like that because you're thinking about that. And so,
right. And
right?
and not only that, but to think that it's the cause of the anxiety is external. That's
Yeah.
one of the,
Yeah.
I think that one is, it's the thing that allows it to continue and allows us to feel not just overwhelmed, but out of control. Like we don't have anything to do with it. It's outside of us. The cause of the reason why I'm feeling this way is because the world is going insane and there's inflation and there's shootings in school and there's this and there's that and it's all external to me, and that's why I'm feeling anxious and there's nothing I can do about it. Woe is me. It's always going to be like this. That is a story that's not going to disappear in 3 or 4 minutes.
Yeah, totally. Right. Yeah. And I love that, just allowing yourself to pause from that can totally shift. And it's not that those things are like been solved, of course, right? There's still external things that are bad that are happening, right?
Yeah.
But your ability to respond in whatever way that feels better for you is actually going to be able to happen instead of staying in that place of despair or just kind of like overwhelm. Despair and overwhelm, we just can't. We just can't do anything. And for me, I noticed that my despair and overwhelm is a type of indulgence sometimes.
Yes, it is.
Which I get really mad, right? When I realize that, because I want to stay there.
Yeah.
Like just like what was happening last week with my mom. I really like, it was like this surge of emotion at my chest and I could cry and I felt like, kind of victimized. And there was something that wanted me to stay there because I was having feelings, right?
That's right.
And so that also happens with me with anxiety about the world and,
Absolutely.
bad events and stuff, is that I kind of want to wallow in it. And then just feel like somehow, I don't know, justified in staying there.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So I was talking to my brother earlier today, and normally I'm a pretty chipper guy, for the most part, and he's usually glum and morose or whatever. And so he was in a pretty good mood, and then he was like, "Oh yeah, you're a little off." Anyway, we had our conversation, and at the end, he was like, "Well, I really hope that your day gets better, and whatever it is going on, and that you feel better." And I was like, nah, thank you for that. But I don't want that right now because I want to just soak in it. I just want to feel this, I want to just be with it,
Yeah.
And so, the funny thing is that when we are willing to at least admit what you just said, which is that sometimes we're perpetuating it because there's some reason we want, like there's something about that feeling that, I don't know that it's comforting or anything, but it's something about it that we want, right?
We
We
feel
want it to stick
activated
around.
in some way.
I don't mean to be crass, but the way I described it to him, I said, it's like sometimes, if you have a really stinky fart, you don't want it to go away just yet.
You want to know the extent.
That's what I mean.
The
Like you kind
extent
of
of the problem.
like, yeah, you don't want it to dissipate too quickly. You're like, no, let me just,
Just steep in it for a bit.
sorry. That's how it goes. Sometimes my mind's
Well,
like,
yeah, and that's a brilliant example because it really matches what's happening, is that we want to sit in that just kind of
that's right.
the griminess of the mind because it's something.
It's something.
Right?
We made it. It's ours. It has something to do with us. And even though it's stinky, at least it's something.
Someone else's anxiety or farts are horrible.
Open up the window. Let's go.
Oh my gosh. Well, we're really talking openly now. This is fabulous.
Yes.
I wanted to, it kind of reminds me of another reason why I've had a hard week, but I think a really cool example of how Dharma works. So yesterday was the full moon. So in the morning, I took the 8 Mahayana precepts. And one of those, is to fast after your one meal of the day. And also like your mind is steeped in a good way. Like I really, I was practicing Dharma throughout the day. I was continually reminding myself of my precepts, and that, really my whole day was to be in service to others, right? And I was at work too. And come about 12 o'clock, I feel in my pocket and I realize that 2 of the cards that I had brought with me today, out of my debit, my credit, my ID, and another card, 2 of them were not in my pocket. And I was like, okay, that's not good. Okay, what do I do now? Uh-oh, retrace my steps. So on my lunch break, I did that. I retraced my steps. I called all the lost and found numbers I, thought to call. And my first reaction, right, was to like really just dive into panic. Like it was like, I was thinking, bless you.
Thank you.
I was thinking about like, oh my gosh, like, what if this totally destroys my credit? What if people start trying, like stealing my identity, all the things, like really spiraling, right? And I was like, no, like, this is my Dharma day, all days are Dharma days, right? But this is like one that I've really specified that I'm going to be practicing the Dharma. So I really made an effort to like what you did, to just kind of, okay, I'm just going to sit here. What does it feel like to have this kind of like really intense anxiety, where there could be results out of this that are not great? There could be like bad consequences out of that. Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah, what does that feel like? And what would a Buddha do in this situation? What would Lama do? And I really, really just sat with that. And it was so liberating to just recognize that I can have something really stressful happen. And I don't have to launch into this like spiral that I normally would have. And I just kind of sat with it for a bit. And it's not that I didn't then just drop it, right? Like I still, contacted the buses lost and found. I, turned off, like, I froze my credit, with the 3 different credit unions and, took the steps, right? That's important. But I didn't let the anxiety take over my life. And what was wonderful is that the rest of the day, I was fine. I was totally fine. I then went and took my car to the dealership to get repairs done, and came back home, talked with my sister who's, struggling with her cat. And that really is what, this practice is about, is how do we move out of that mind that is so wrapped up in the I, and what is going to happen to me? And, like, how am I going to get screwed over? And instead says, oh, you know what? Yeah, it's being taken care of. You've done all you can. And now let's attend to, everything else and other people and all of that. So it's really like, it felt good. And I still don't have my ID or credit card,
Yeah.
but but
Well,
it's okay.
it's think about how practical it is, because when your mental, well, all of your energy is going into this sort of anxious state, it's not helpful.
It's not helpful.
And it's painting this picture of helplessness, right? And maybe and the thing is, like in your case, for example, you once you dealt with the anxiety and you sort of allowed you provided the antidote, and then you did what needed to be done, and you were more able, you were more capable, you had the capacity to handle your business, which then alleviates the source, the thing that you're concerned about in the first place. So like that's amazing. It's just like opening up the window. Like
Yeah.
there we
Yeah.
go, right? Like here we go. Like I think it's so amazing, right? Like because when we are in these states, it really is draining us of our
Oh my
energy,
gosh.
right? And
Yeah.
it oftentimes causes us to sort of miss the mark and not do what we need to do. We might end up doing something like, being like retracing our steps neurotically, right? It might have us calling people and blaming them, or saying that somebody stole your cards or whatever, right? Could go down this path that's really not helpful and could in fact be harmful. But instead, you're like, no, let me see clearly, right? Like you clear up your mind a little bit and you're like, I see what I need to.
Yep. Yeah, it's so powerful. And is actually quite, I think quite simple, right? There's not a ton of I feel like there's not a ton of training or reading that you need to do to be able to just sit, breathe, and just watch the energy shift.
Yeah.
I really
Yeah.
think that it's something that everyone can do, and it does take practice. But
Yes.
I think that it's possible, and really, if this isn't something that you've worked on, start with your everyday just kind of anxieties. Like, you don't have to start with the big stuff, right? But like, being in traffic or like being a little bit late to work or something, just allow yourself to just breathe and
Well, you
let it
bring up,
notice it.
sorry. Yeah, that's what I was gonna say is like the first step is recognizing that it's there.
Yeah.
One of the things that changed since I took up Dharma practice is I don't bite my fingernails anymore, right?
Nice.
So I used to for a long, long time. I mean, decades, right? And I would look it up every now and then. I'd be like, what in the world? Why do people bite their fingernails? I don't get this. It's such a
Mhm.
weird thing, right? And the sort of the main thing is like anxiety, right? It's what, and then I'm like, no, but I'm not anxious. I'm not really even anxious. I'm smoking pot all the time. Like I'm so chill. Like I'm
Right.
not anxious. Um, but then it turned out that actually that I just simply wasn't aware of it. That
Right.
I was ignoring it. There was ignorance there. I had blinders up to my own anxiety. I was acting on it. My body was feeling it all. It was happening, but I wasn't naming it. I wasn't labeling it. I wasn't aware that it was there. And so you were saying, like, take your ordinary everyday anxieties. And even there, if you feel like if you don't have anxiety, just look a little deeper.
Yeah.
It's there. It's
Yeah.
somewhere at some point, right? Like there's no doubt. Like thankfully, hopefully, maybe it's not super pronounced, but there's got to be at least a little bit. And then it may very well be that practicing with those smaller anxieties, that sort of more low level anxieties, then can help you get into a better position to deal with the big ones like the attacks.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. Oh, congrats on not biting your nails anymore. That's pretty exciting.
Yeah, well, and it's such a cool thing because I'm like, oh, right. Like it's so weird because I am like, why in the world would I bite my finger? Like now that I don't do it, I
Yeah.
recognize what an odd sort of habit pattern that is, right? But it
Yeah.
was persistent. I would use the stuff and paint my fingernails with I'd do all kinds of things. And nothing really worked. And now I'm just like, yeah, no, I don't, whatever the underlying stress that caused me to do that, that's not there anymore. So I feel really grateful that, uh, yeah, that's just one of those symptoms, right? And there's all kinds of symptoms. Drug and alcohol abuse, for example,
Yeah.
good symptom of
Pretty good
of
symptom.
it,
Yeah, pretty good one. Yeah.
right? Like there's a no doubt that, you know, if you're using drugs and alcohol, overeating, that kind of thing, all those coping mechanisms that don't quite work for us, there's a
Yeah.
good chance that what you're dealing with is anxiety.
Right, right. Because yeah, all of our behaviors, there's a root to them. So we're not just doing those things just out of thin air. There's a reason for them. We're smart. Human beings are smart. We've developed tools to help us, deal with our anxiety, but sometimes they're just not helpful tools.
How cool is it though that regardless whether you're talking about just sort of secular approaches to dealing with anxiety, or you're talking about the Dharma or Dharma practice, that the number one thing is awareness of
Mm,
breathing, deep breathing is in fact the number one sort of recommended thing if you're dealing with anxiety, like in the moment, that like bringing your attention to your breath and breathing deeper and slower is like something that's recommended, and even was recommended by the Buddha way back when, and by modern psychologists, psychiatrists, doctors. I've noticed this actually. So my youngest daughter deals with a lot of anxiety, and she has like panic attacks and stuff like that. And you know it's cool. She knows that I practice, and she's well aware of all that. But the few times like I used to, I tried to sort of like help her with her anxiety and stuff, with belly breathing and whatnot, and there was resistance. She was like, Dad, like that's not going to work for this.
yeah,
That's not
yeah,
going to work for this. And I, like I had to try to whatever, I had to adjust my approach to it. But now it's really interesting because I've noticed the last like 4 or 5 times where this has shown up, that I'll just say like, hey, oh right, hey, I see, is this what's happening? Is this how you're feeling? And she'll like, yes, yes. And then I'll be like, look, just humor me. Let's just do 10 belly breaths.
mm,
Well, and I'll do the counting. We'll just do this together. It'll be over with quickly. If it doesn't help, no harm, right? And then we'll do it. And some like there's even been occasions where we get to like where we got to like 7, 6, 7, and then she's like, oh, no, that's good. Let's go.
yeah,
I'm
yeah,
good.
yeah. I
Just like
love
I was
it.
saying, like my own experience, right? Today, like
Yeah,
I think it's gonna be something that's gonna be there. That's how she is too, right? Like
yeah,
it's gonna
yeah,
be there all day, and this sucks, and then just a few breaths later, you're like, oh,
yeah.
that was
Well, it sounds like, you're starting with validation of her experience, right? That's such a shift, saying, oh yeah, this is what you're dealing with. Oh, that's really hard. Can we try this? That really changes the approach. And I think that's something we can do for ourselves, is use that validation when we have that awareness that we're experiencing anxiety, and just say to ourselves like, oh gosh, yeah, this is what I'm dealing with.
right.
Oh, I'm sorry. And
Yes,
we
some
can just kind of pump
compassion.
pump the brakes a little bit and say like, oh, I see you. I feel that, and it helps us slow down so that we can get to that point of like self-regulating and doing the breathing, or whatever it is that we need to do.
That's
Because
right.
otherwise, if we're just kind of spinning out, we might not hear, or we might not, hear the awareness that, oh, this is happening. So I like that, just kind of pausing and taking a moment to be kind to ourselves when we recognize.
Absolutely. Well, that's why. So that's the wisdom and compassion approach. The wisdom is the recognition, the awareness, right? Allowing it to be, recognizing it, accepting it as it is. That's wisdom, right? And then the compassion is what you were just talking about, like, oh, like being willing to sort of be like, oh, that's what's happening, and I love me, and I don't want this to, I don't, this isn't helpful to me,
Yeah.
right? And being willing to give to ourselves those few belly breaths and the time, right? Being with that, a lot of times when we're anxious, we're like, something has to happen. I got to go. Like, it's like this sort of like sped up thing, right? So it's very compassionate and very caring towards ourselves to slow it down. It's
Yeah.
okay if you just say, I'm just going to slow it down for 5 minutes and then I'm going to speed it right back up because I got to
Right.
get to that stuff. That's fine. Give
Right.
yourself those 5 minutes of breathing and it'll radically transform the entire day.
Oh my gosh, yeah. I think, yeah, if that's anything that I've learned about anxiety is that it's most of the time lying to you. You know,
Oh, yeah.
it's making the situation appear much more dangerous, much more threatening, so that you respond, right? But that's the purpose of anxiety, so that you're you know, activated to respond to the situation that might be dangerous. But most of the time, there's not the need for that kind of response. And so, yeah, I love that you say that, you know, really, which it takes a lot of effort to say, I'm going to say no to you right now, anxiety. And we can come back together. I can meet you in a little bit, but I'm going to say no right now. And just sit here with this. I think, yeah, that can be one of the kindest things you can do to yourself, even if everything in your body is telling you, no, I gotta keep going, right? Just give yourself that moment.
You
It's
deserve it.
huge.
You deserve it, And I think it's interesting because you know, Mingyur Rinpoche, I think that's his name.
Yeah, yeah.
Anyway, I like the way that he put it. He said he was talking about the monkey mind, and he was like the monkey mind it likes to stay active, and it needs to have a job to do. Like it has to have something that is focused on,
Yeah.
and that's actually sort of the root of the problem here. Is that it was producing thoughts, right? It's a discursive mindset. It's producing all kinds of thoughts, and you got attached to some of those thoughts, the ones about how things are going to be really bad and it's all going to hell, right? Like that's what happened is like it presented some thoughts and then you got wrapped up in it, you panic, right? And then the panic is like sort of telling the monkey like, yeah, let's focus on that, that's your job. And then it just keeps going and it gets more and more active, right? Before you know it, the monkey's like shaking on the cage and screaming and throwing its poop and stuff, right?
Yeah.
And then so you're like, okay, so what do you do with a monkey when it's like that? Well, you can't just like, you can't give it a tranquilizer. That's not particularly helpful. I mean, maybe you could, but it's still not very helpful. The idea is to give it another job,
Hmm.
right? Another task. And there is some resistance to that task. The task can be breathing meditation, right? Here's something to focus on. It can be, breathing meditation, maybe mixed with a mantra, right? Something like that, even more sort of a job, something to focus on. I think that mantras in this particular case can be really, really helpful. Combine that with the breathing meditation. But I was thinking about something that's come up for me fairly recently, which and I found it quite helpful. It's actually a meditation practice, but I'm quite confident that it would work for anxiety as well,
Hmm.
for anxiety like panic attacks, and situations where you're kind of feeling overwhelmed with anxiety, and that is to bust out a broom, right? Or
Hmm.
or some other cleaning mechanism, but let's just say a broom right now, and sweep the room, but not as a distraction. That won't work, right?
Yeah.
Like it's so the idea being that as you're actually like sweeping the ground and like getting whatever dog hair and stuff, you think to yourself, like you imagine I'm sweeping away the unhealthy thoughts that are causing my anxiety. That's
Hmm.
what I'm doing. And you would even maybe visualize, as you're doing it, visualizing the thoughts, because you can feel them, they're there, right?
Yeah.
Oh, bad, 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 it's there. And so like when you see the crap on the ground and you're like sweeping it up, you're like, yeah, I'm sweeping up those. That's what I'm doing here, right? And
Yeah.
then maybe even while doing that, maybe do so, like what the do the four immeasurables maybe, or maybe some Om Mani Padme Hum or something like that, right?
Yeah.
While doing that and sort of like, yeah, this is what I'm doing. And the good news is that if you do that, it is distractive. It did give the monkey mind and the body something else to do. You're
Mhm.
changing your environment. And even if you're still somewhat anxious at the end of it, your floor's clean.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. You got something done. Oh, I love that idea. Yeah, and I think, yeah, anything too with like visualization and, really involving your experience in what you're doing, can be so helpful. And one of those that's really helpful for me, when I'm feeling very anxious, maybe it's just the anxiety itself, the feeling of anxiety that's not necessarily tied to something, or maybe I'm feeling anxious about a situation, regardless of what kind of anxiety it is. Sometimes what I'll do, what I've learned to do, um, is to imagine how, every sentient being has in some way experienced this type of anxiety or this type of situation, whether in this lifetime or another lifetime. And in that, I can recognize that I'm not alone, and which is very in for some reason just so pacifying. And then also, can I imagine, that my anxiety is enough to take on all the anxiety of others? May my anxiety, satisfy whatever destructive actions have led to maybe someone feeling that anxiety. May my anxiety take care of that karma and just wipe it away. And so there's a real kind of like, bodhicitta action happening there, where you're imagining your suffering taking away the suffering of everyone else, and not in a self-harming way, but it just like, okay, well, I'm already experiencing this, so how about I try and use this to generate my motivation, to help others. And that's been really, really helpful for me in the last week. Yeah, I like that one a lot.
It's counterintuitive to take on, the anxiety and suffering of others, and seriously for the all sentient beings. It seems counterintuitive, but it is incredibly helpful. And I'm glad that you mentioned it, because it's also sort of pointing towards Tonglen as a really helpful practice.
Yes. Yeah.
And I do know that there are some really excellent anxiety specific Tonglen practices
Yeah.
that involve sort of like really feeling the anxiety, visualizing it, first offering, doing the sending and receiving meditation for yourself, then for somebody else, and then for the whole world, right?
Mhm.
And I think that can be really, really helpful as well for the more pronounced. Maybe it might not be particularly effective in the moment, and more like what you're
Right,
saying might be
right,
better in
right.
the moment. But I would think if someone was dealing with sort of chronic anxiety, that would be really helpful. And I do know, I know that there was a sutra, I don't know which one it is exactly, but oh yeah, it's the one called the removal of distracting thoughts. And I thought it was kind of cool because the Buddha lays out this whole way of dealing with these kinds of thoughts, right? There's a whole method. And at the end, he actually sort of seemed to point to, it was sort of like um, 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 unusual, but it was like an anger, right? To say like to get sort of almost like mad at the
Get
thoughts
fierce.
themselves. Where you're like, I'm not, hey, I tried to ignore you, I tried to transform you, now I'm pissed. You're hurting me, and I don't want you here anymore. And to really like sort of like give, kick them out,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. So that the final option is to be, okay, kind of forceful, like, hey, mind, like you're kind of screwing me up right now. You're screwing
Right.
me over and you're harming me. I need to stop that right now.
That's
Yeah.
right. That's the compassionate, sort of wrathful aspect of this practice, right? Like it
Right.
is because you have so much compassion for yourself that you will kick
You're
these
like, hey,
down.
cut it out.
Yeah,
Cut it out. Yeah.
enough.
Oh, Daniel, thank you so much. I really appreciate this conversation tonight. Yeah, I feel more at ease, that's for sure.
Me too. I always feel that way though in talking to you, and I hope that whatever anxious energy you feel, that it is transformed into helpful energy that is beneficial to all sentient beings. Jack.
Thank you, Daniel. Yeah, the same for you, and the same to all of our listeners. Thank you so much, for coming every time. We really appreciate and care about you, and look forward to next week.
Yep, same. Thanks,
All
Jack.
right.
Thank you,
Thanks.
everybody. Bye bye.
Bye.